Side thing going on today. I'm going to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Riska. Can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Here.
Mrs. Koski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Here.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanes?
Here.
And Mrs. Yarko?
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda with the addition of a presentation to swear in new police officers as item 6A.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased this evening to provide an update on a micro grant program that we first started talking about a few months ago, but we finally have been able to work out all the procedures and get it as automated as possible, and now we're really excited to roll out the program. So let me talk a little bit about it. The program provides grants, not loans, to small businesses with 5 employees or less. The grants are to assist with the payment of a business's preparation, prevention, and responses to the coronavirus. Some of the activities that the funds can be used for include purchasing materials or equipment needed to adapt business spaces and activities to comply with the CDC guidelines with respect to social distancing and the like. It can also be used for revenue shortfalls in the areas that affect rent, mortgage payments, and utility bills. In addition to other eligibility requirements for the program, applicants must have a Dun & Bradstreet number, better known as DUNS, and be registered with the Federal System for Award Management, better known as SAMS. Those who need assistance with their SAMS registration can attend. Well, we had a free webinar this morning, and we had a number of businesses participate in that. But the second one will be on September 8th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that webinar will help businesses that do not have a DUNS number or a SAMS number get them. So it's about a 2-hour webinar. It's pretty straightforward, but we strongly encourage businesses to participate in the webinar. It will streamline the application process. For those that already have those numbers, they can begin submitting their applications on September 1st. So the maximum award for these micro grants is $5,000. It could be less. It just depends on the circumstances, but we're promoting this and strongly encouraging businesses, small businesses, to apply for the grant. And for those who would like more information, simply go to our website, sterling-heights.net/microgrant, and you can get all the information you need. You can get a link to the webinar, you can get a link to the actual application, and it has all the pertinent deadlines on the site as well. So we look forward to dispersing this much needed funding for small businesses. And Mayor, that concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. A late addition to our agenda tonight is a presentation. This is a swearing in ceremony of a new police officer, and for that I'll hand it over to our police chief, Dale Wojciechowski. Chief.
Thank you very much, Mayor Taylor. I'll take this microphone out. Again, we haven't been here in a while, COVID lockdown, and we are starting Addie's process here right in February. And then COVID hit and everything went lockdown, and she sweated it out for quite a few months. But we made it happen. So I'm proud to announce our newest hire here in Sterling Heights, Adelaja Shahu, Addie, if you want to remember an easier way to say it. Great story again. Another awesome hire for Sterling Heights. She graduated from Henry Ford II High School right here in Sterling Heights. Moved here from Albania when she was 5 years old with her family. She speaks Albanian. She just got done doing a year of police work in Hamtramck. She got to see a lot in Hamtramck, and it was really impressive when I got to meet with Addie this last week, and we're talking about her job in the city, and she looked me square in the eye, and she said, Sterling Heights was my dream job, period. I was going to end up here no matter what happened. So that speaks a lot to the city, the reputation, the way the city is run, our elected officials, to have that kind of commitment from Addie and her wanting to be here. So with that, Addie, if you want to go ahead and raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that of the state of Michigan, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer in and for the city of Sterling Heights, and that I will strive to maintain the highest standards of that department, to the best of my knowledge and ability. Congratulations.
I would like to start off by saying thank you to the councilman and councilwoman for giving me the opportunity to make my dream come true. Like Chief said, this has been my to-go city and my #1 city. I would like to start out also say thank you to my family who has supported me, and I can't wait to succeed and show everybody what I'm all about.
Thank you, Addie. Normally, I invite council to come down and shake hands, but we're not doing that with COVID, so we'll do a virtual high five, I guess. But I would like to thank council for immediately filling these spots as they open. We haven't had an opening in quite a while, and with this filling of this spot, we're good for a while. And again, your continued support on council for our training needs and funding and budget, I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And with that, if anyone on council would like to say anything, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Good to see you back at our council meetings with these swearing-in ceremonies. Council, is there anyone who has any comments? Mrs. Srowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I just wanted to congratulate Addie. I remember back when she was serving at a restaurant that we love to frequent, which is Dodge Park, Coney Island. So good to see you and congratulations. And knowing her from that experience, I know that she's going to make an excellent addition to our law enforcement. And I'm so glad you came back to us and are staying with us. Congratulations. You're welcome.
Council, anyone else? If not, I want to just say on behalf of the entire city council and the 135,000 or so residents of Sterling Heights, we welcome you aboard and thank you for your service. We appreciate your work. We know that right now is a difficult time for police officers nationwide, but our officers have always maintained the highest level of professionalism, and it doesn't matter if they've been here for 20 to 30 years or if they're brand new on the job. As we saw recently, they're always answering the call and representing our city with the highest level of professionalism. So we thank you for your service. We hope you stay safe out there. Keep us safe. God bless. And let's give her one big round of applause. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
That will move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is a public hearing. And this is to consider the application by Apram Stainless Services and Solutions, USA, LLC, for an industrial facilities tax exemption certificate at 7077 18.5 Mile Road. We have a presentation from our Senior Economic Development Advisor, Luke Bonner. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Vanderpool, members of council. Good to be here again, talking about another exciting investment in our industrial corridor. Apram Stainless Services is applying for this industrial facilities exemption certificate for a new 100,000 square foot facility on 18.5 Mile Road. The investment is a little over $9 million in the real property and then also $1.8 million in personal property. Apram has been in the community for about 18 years, previously known as ArcelorMittal. They were spun out of that group about 2009 or 2010. And like with any company that's been here for a while and it's growing, expanding, building a new facility to move into creating a vacancy on their facility they'll be vacating on Center Drive will allow for another local Sterling Heights company to either grow into that or a company that's not currently in the city to move into that location. They also have a second facility on Mound Road, which you probably were never aware of, but it's actually the tall building in front of where the new Amazon distribution center is. It's a 30-foot high crane facility. Both of those facilities, by the way, are in high demand, and there is not expecting too much time before new companies expand or move into either of those facilities. So we like it when these companies grow and expand and create opportunities for others to do the same. Based on their investment of $9 million, new full-time jobs of 5, they'll be relocating the 35 jobs they have from Center Drive to 18.5 Mile. Plus the high technology activity credit of 1 year, we are recommending a 10-year tax term. With the new jobs created, the economic multiplier of 4, we anticipate another indirect 20 jobs created and another $900,000 of economic impact in the community. From a new revenue perspective, based on this tax abatement, we anticipate over the 10-year period of time, there will be $367,000 of new city taxes generated and $739,000 of new school taxes generated as part of that investment. So I would like to invite Randy Keel, Vice President from Apram Stainless, up to talk more about the company, their decision to expand here, and what we can expect the future to hold for Apram. So hold on one second.
Thank you for consideration of our abatement application this evening. My name is Randy Cal. I'm the Vice President of Finance for Apram Stainless. We are part of a global manufacturer of stainless steel with producing mills in Europe and South America, and we're headquartered in France. We have 3 sales agencies in North America and a processing and warehousing facility in Sterling Heights known as a service center. The service center processes and sells stainless slit coils and sheets, primarily for the automotive and appliance markets throughout U.S. The service center moved from Troy to Sterling Heights in 2002. As Luke mentioned, we've been here 18 years. Now, after 3 years of planning, we are expanding into a brand new facility located on 18.5 Mile, owned by Mancini Group. We look forward to our continued growth here, which will include new hires in Sterling Heights. So I know there was a few questions about building vacancies, and currently we lease 2 facilities. As Luke mentioned, one on Mound Road, which is currently listed. We have 1 piece of equipment which was recently sold, so we expect that building to be subleased immediately. There's some strong interest in that property today. Our main plant is on Center Drive, where our main operations are and our people, and that lease will run through December of 2022. However, there is a sublease provision in that lease, and we plan to sublease that facility as we coordinate with the move into the 18.5 Mile property. Our realtors tell us that it's more likely they'll find tenants that will sign long-term deals, which will let us vacate our lease immediately, new tenants coming in, as opposed to a shorter-term solution of subleasing through Apram, which we're in the steel business, not in the landlord business. So our new building will be ready for occupancy sometime in September. The City of Sterling Heights and its employees have really been great over the last 18 years, and we look forward to many more years here as a business resident. We appreciate your time tonight, and if there's any questions, I'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kell. We will take comments from the audience first, and then when the public hearing is closed, the council will have a chance to deliberate and bring you up for any questions if we do have any, okay? All right, thank you, sir. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item. If not, I'll close the public hearing, and council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
Resolve to adopt the resolution approving the application of Aparem Stainless Services and Solutions USA LLC for an industrial facilities tax exemption certificate at 7077 18.5 Road, parcel number 50-10-10-09-200-053 for a period of 10 years in accordance with the guidelines established by City Council, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized to sign, as applicable, all documents required in conjunction with this approval.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Ms. Zarko?
I have just a few things to say. And I have no questions, they're all comments. First of all, I'm not concerned about the vacancies in that particular area because they're in demand all the time. So I have to agree with the realtors that they probably will be filled before they have to be subleased. The other thing is in reading over the application and the general information that they've given us, what I find, I'm always looking at what part is they're doing for recycling or for the environment. And not only are they probably going to build this facility where it's sustainable, but the products that they're making are sustainable products that will help in the next level of the environment. So I really appreciate that. I can't thank you enough for coming and finding another place in Sterling Heights and you're staying here. So I wish you a lot of luck, and we'll just keep watching as you succeed. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zarko. Anyone else, council? With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Luke. Next on our agenda is an ordinance introduction. This is to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City Code of Ordinances to create the Diversity and Inclusion Commission. We do have a presentation from our Assistant City Attorney, Don Denault. Mr. Denault.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for having me this evening. I don't have a very lengthy introduction for you this evening. This is the ordinance that was presented 2 meetings ago, and it is still in its current form. It is postured before you this evening as a postponement of the item. The matter is still up for introduction, and the ordinance itself, just by way of a brief recap, was an ordinance to modify the current Ethnic Community Committee and change its status to that of a commission, and change its mission to that of the Diversity and Inclusion Commission. But with that, I'm here for any questions, of course, as is Ms. Melanie Davis, and we're happy to help.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Denault. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Mr. Jefferson.
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. I would like to know if we could get some kind of brief description here tonight for this ordinance, because I'd like to know what are they diversifying and including people into, and how are their conclusions or actions going to be handled, and where are they diversified, including people into? Is it for city projects, projects in the community? For example, we just had this tax exemption come up here. Is to include diversity in their employment practices. How is this commission going to work out? Because if somebody could please explain how this is going to work into the Sterling Heights city system is what we need to find out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Jackie Ryan, Sterling Heights. I'd like to know, first off, how this all started, because there's nothing wrong with our ethnic committee and that. I don't see the need for a commission to be formed, because when you start doing inclusion, you're doing exclusion. And I'd like to know who's included and who's excluded, because there's going to have that happen. And first off, I'd like to know if this is even constitutionally sound to be doing something like this, because we already have in our Constitution that everyone is created equally. And in our city, that's how it's been for years. We're all created equally. So we don't need to be dividing everything out here, which that is a way to cause discrimination. And I don't think we need that in our city. And the fact that you're doing this, there's a lot of things that just need a lot of questions answered. I mean, you're basically starting off saying that you're doing this to replace the ethnic. That was started out to be a 5 people, then it went to 11. Now you're going to make this 15 members, and they're supposed to be advising the city. Well, what exactly are they going to be advising the city on? Because right now, you've got all your residents should be able to do that. You know, you don't need to form a commission to do that. That's not necessary. It's totally unnecessary. The other thing is, it's going to go throughout and be part of an influence on all of our boards and commissions and their topics. So this is going to go far outreaching what the ethnic committee did. Now, the ethnic committee doesn't really get funded like a commission does. And that you're not explaining to any of the residents in any way, shape, or form what the difference is between a committee and this commission that you're trying to form. So to me, that's really vague in here. It's also not going to be under the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to know why. And that it's not going to, and the fact on your last one, it may request funding from the city council for events and training. Well, what kind of training are you talking about doing? You know, are you going to be doing training of what kind? Oh, that's a big question mark to all of us residents who've lived here for many, many years. That now all of a sudden, this council decides to start doing this. And I still question whether this is even constitutionally sound to be doing such a thing that will cause a discrimination problem in our city. My other thing is, at this point, you are basically including what groups? Now, I mean, you're going into diversity. And I think you need to define diversity here. That's going through the United States right now. That's causing a great deal of problems here. Because what you do is you're separating people out. And when you separate people out, like I said, you cause a problem. And we don't want this in our city. We don't need it. It's not necessary. And like I said, I question the fact that this is even constitutionally being done right. Because this is part of our boards and commissions. This is part of our local government. This has to fall under our Constitution. We already have an equal rights Constitution for everybody. So you don't need to go doing something that's going to cause a discrimination problem. I mean, there was an ordinance that was done, tried to be done here, that we had to do a whole recall and get it out of here. And is this what you're starting to do again? Is the big question a lot of us residents have. A lot of residents are not here. They're on vacation. It's summertime. They're trying to get their kids into some kind of school setting here. So I question this whole agenda that's coming through here, that it's not necessary, and I ask you not to do this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you.
Anyone else under this item? Yes, ma'am. Anyone else on this item? Come on up.
I've been isolating, basically, and working to stay safe. But when I read this, I had to come out. First of all, I wonder if this is constitutional. I have a question. We have the Bill of Rights. We have the civil rights law, protect all Americans. I don't see why this carve-out feature was necessary to eliminate the ethnic committee, which was broad-based and was to celebrate our differences as well, our commonality of our national American citizenship, and provide information about citizenship and voting and all that. That was a unifying. This is definitely identity politics. This has nothing, not should be here. We have a well-diverse population in Sterling Heights, and I think most people don't see a problem working together and having the freedom afforded to everyone. I think this is definitely identity politics and will further divide our city rather than bring it together. The ethnic committee was non-political. It was not identifying a particular identity, whether it's race, sex, age, ethnicity, or the color of your skin's race. All those things divide us. We are all Americans. We're all residents of Sterling Heights. This will only serve to divide us and create problems. First of all, our Reverend Martin Luther King, Black African minister, he said we should be defined by the character, our character, not the color of our skin. And you guys are going backward. The civil rights have already passed, and you guys are going back to subjugate everybody to these definitions. That's wrong. Right. The other piece that I have a problem with is that the ordinance is not resolution. An ordinance basically is law. The others are all committees. This becomes an ordinance. And that has some weight. It's harder to eradicate, and it's set into motion. So it's not something that we want. The people don't know about it. A lot of people are not coming. I didn't come to the meetings when they were Zoom. I appreciate that. I came to this because this is an important matter. Third, okay, that was one. It's an ordinance. Second, the Open Meeting Act. They're not required, they're not subject. This is an unelected body that's going to provide for you all these things here. Let me just go over some of the things they're going to provide and direction. And they're going to be telling you guys what they want. And I wonder how much power they have here. This is their duties and responsibility. How many minutes do I have?
You're about out of time, ma'am.
Okay, then I'll make it clear. This is totally dedicated to a special group of people. It's going to take money and time out of uniting us, dividing us, and where our money and time should be spent is for all people, not just a select group. And I don't think we should be hiring someone or determining someone because of their race, their color, their skin. So they have decisions in the hiring practices and the training and so many facets of our city. I think this is totally inappropriate and it's not subject to their decision. That should be elected bodies, not appointed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Elias. Anyone else on this agenda item? Ms. Early?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Jasmine Early from Sterling Heights. It's nice to see you again in face. I really want to understand why the need to modify the ethnic community committee to a diversity and inclusion committee. I'm the one that the mayor calls brown skin. People don't vote for me because they can't understand my English. And I'm an immigrant. For years, you have been asked to appoint me to the ethnic committee, but because my political affiliation and my Judeo-Christian values, you have denied me that right to be in that committee. I come here really concerned because you know that my name has been in that commission and other commissions waiting to be appointed, but it doesn't happen. So you are talking about including other people, while in the meantime, for years, you have been excluding me. And the perfect example why the ethnic committee was created, it was with the purpose to bring the people that are immigrants as myself to assimilate to America. That is why they did it. They didn't do it because they wanted to create an ordinance to make them said, I read here, the commission will then be free to refine its focus, identify needs, and create materials for city council consideration and approvals. For years, myself, who had been part of ours and boards here, the commissions and boards, I had asked you, I'm the immigrant that can tell you what is needed. Yes, we need the commission to stay as the ethnic community committee because we had a growing immigrant community. To call it diversity and inclusion committee, well, actually, you want to make it a commission so you can give money to that commission, is not why it was created. As that immigrant, brown skin, who you can't understand the English that I speak, I ask you, leave that committee alone. I have been there waiting for you to appoint me. Isn't that discrimination? You have been discriminating me for years. Why? But you want to call now the diversity and inclusion to keep me excluded? This is going to go further, because now that you are trying to change it, and now that I'm not involved in politics, at least for now, I'm going to pursue with this. Your discrimination against somebody who fit the role, to be in the ethnic community committee has been dismissed, I have been excluded and discriminated. Think about it, because that change is not going to happen, it can happen, and if you want the diversity and inclusion committee, which clearly had an agenda, which Mr. Rackett could further, especially since he hates people like me that hold Christian, Judeo-Christian values. So don't talk about inclusion when you are hating. I apply again. For years I have been number one in the ethnic committee list. I apply again, and I hope this time you don't discriminate me and do not change the name. Thank you.
Anyone else on this item?
It's easy to forget.
Anyone else on this item? If not, close that. And so this was an item that was already moved and supported, and it was postponed at the July 22nd regular city council meeting. Postponement was to today, and so we do have a motion on the floor moved by Member Radke and supported by myself, and that is to introduce the ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City Code of Ordinances to create a diversity and inclusion commission. We are in deliberation on that now, and so we'll pick up with our deliberations, and I'll offer the floor to a council member who wants to speak on this item. Anyone? Somebody's going to have to speak in order to do something, so I can't just all sit here. I'm like, Mr. Yanez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and frankly, I'm not sure what I want to do other than, go back to a couple weeks ago when I tried to table this, the motion for this ordinance. I think what the speakers brought out is telling, because it's not clear what this commission is going to do. I'm unclear on what this commission is going to do. And I realize this is just the first step and there can be amendments made and so forth, but I think we need more clarity. Certainly at the last meeting, this was discussed There were several council members who were very clear about keeping the ethnic committee as it is. I do not want to vote against inclusion and diversity. I think that there's, frankly, I think a lot of the concerns that were expressed here tonight are frankly unfounded, but I can't push back on that because, again, I really don't know what this commission's going to do. The commission, other than advise city council on both diversity and inclusion. So at this stage, Mr. Mayor, I don't really want to take a vote on this. I don't want to vote no on this, but I cannot vote yes on this as it stands. If you're looking for me to make a motion, I can't help you out right now. I really don't know what motion to make on this other than let the roll call go and see what happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Anyone else have any discussion?
Your
Mrs.
Taylor?
Zarko. Sure.
You know, I too have some questions about what this, well, it seems that it's going to be a commission. Maybe moving forward, we might think of it as a committee. The other thing is I feel that the ethnic committee should become a commission. So if you're thinking about what changes we would make, I think that it should be upgraded to a commission. I'm not sure that I would want both this diversity and inclusion to be a part of the commission. If you attended or if you watched the video from the African American Coalition meeting, Darlene King, who was a moderator there, was very specific when she said there was a difference between ethnic diversity and racial diversity. So I could see where we would not want to put everybody together. Is there a chance if this commission was formed or committee was formed, we might have a liaison that would serve on both commissions, committees, which, you know, if that's possible. But for right now, I think that we still need to do more research. And as Mr. Denault brought up at the last meeting, is there's very little comparatives to find because this hasn't been done locally. So, so I have to agree with Mr. Yanez that there's a lot of work that has to be done here, and I can't see how we could actually vote on this tonight. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zarko.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to take Ms. Schmidt, and I'll get you next, Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I, as well, as I spoke at the last meeting, would like to see the two committees remain separate. To me, they will have two different missions, of which we don't even know what the true mission of this new commission is. The selection process isn't real clear to me, or the criteria for how one will be picked for this new group is not clear to me. So there's too many unknowns, and I also believe that this should not be a committee. I think it should be not a commission. I believe it should be a committee. I don't believe that they should be an advisory. I mean, all of our committees are advisories to us, but I think when it's a commission, that's a step above. There's too many unknowns still in this ordinance, and it being an ordinance needs to be cut and dry in my eyes. I need to understand the full spectrum of the ordinance, and at this point I cannot, because the information is not here. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr.
Can
Mayor.
I just, Mr. Early, I want to say something. We've set up this auditorium in a way to have social distancing and keep people safe. Now, you're the only one, for all of the meetings that we've had here, you're the only person who hasn't worn a mask. And you're up and down, you're moving back and forth. If I'm just going to ask you, out of respect for the other people here who are abiding by the rules and trying to keep their fellow residents safe, if you would just remain seated okay? I'm not going to, say anything more about your mask, but if you would just at least remain seated and not be moving up and down and around while we're in deliberations, I'd appreciate that, okay? Thank you. Ms. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to see the Ethnic Advisory Committee turned into a commission and be kept separate. In regard to a diversity type commission, I think we need to do quite a bit more research, because at this point, I'm not seeing a mission statement or any explanation exactly what its purpose is and what its issues are going to be. I would like to suggest that we do a little more research before we establish that, and I would like to see it reviewed at the strategic planning meeting coming up in January. Today, I received an email from the American Management Association's Women's Leadership Center, and it has to do with diversity and inclusion. It's a free webinar, and I would suggest that every member of council take this, because it will give us some insight as to what we are trying to do and maybe some suggestions on how to do it right. Just to give you an idea what this is all about, it says how to be an ally. An ally is someone who educates himself about issues around inclusiveness, strives to find common ground with others, and actively support individuals from different groups. Allies are an important component of a successful diversity and inclusion initiative and can help organizations ensure the effectiveness of their programs. They act when discrimination occurs, and they support, advocate for, and champion others who need such support. And then it lists about 5, 6 different issues that they teach you how to handle. So I would like to see the Ethnic Committee become a commission, and I would like to see the diversity group postponed to strategic planning in January, and I would like council to do some research so that we know what we want to create. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Koski. Anyone else? Mrs. Strowski.
Okay, I'll go. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. This has definitely been quite a well-talked over and well-debated issue. I do have to disagree with 2 of our speakers, because we had a meeting on the 22nd that this room was filled. The residents do know about this item. They spoke quite in favor of having diversity and inclusion. So on the opposite side, obviously they're not the people that you speak to probably all the time, because you didn't know that they were here, so I would expect you didn't know them, but they did have quite a voice. With that, and knowing that there is a strong voice for inclusion and diversity, I am always in favor of inclusion and diversity, but I do agree with my council members who have spoken, and that I want to keep both. I said this at the last meeting. I will continue to say at the Ethnic Committee they have a wonderful mission. They have succeeded very well in what they have been asked and tasked to do. They do advise us to an extent, but they do bring us together. That's also what we want of diversity and inclusion. But we don't have guidelines. We don't have ideas. You're right that we don't know who's going to be on this. How do we pick and choose while making sure that we're not excluding? Those items are very touchy, and I don't want to start something, because although it is a hotbed issue in the country right now for racial tensions, I don't want to just be the knee-jerk reaction. We need to think this through. We need to deliberate. We need to get good direction that we don't quite now have. So at this time, I am not in favor of replacing the Ethnic Committee at this point. I don't want to replace them. I want them to continue, and I would like to also have a diversity and inclusion committee or commission. So that is where I am with it, and as it's presented to us, I cannot support it.
Mr. Radke. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Denault, would you come to the microphone to the chair? I just wanted to get a couple quick things out of the way before I speak on this issue. Some of the residents wonder if this committee is constitutional. Could you speak on that, Mr. Denault?
Thank you, Mr. Rankin, Mayor and Council. Yes, it's the first I've heard that question raised, and certainly from our viewpoint, it's perfectly constitutional. It's an ordinance to create a committee to advise you, a commission to advise you about how to diversify, how to include people, how to make people feel included as part of the community. Nothing about that is unconstitutional. So to their points about, could it become an issue where it's not handled properly or people become divided? Sure, that can happen with any group. And the key point there is that council oversees and controls and appoints good people, good residents of the community to be a part of the process. So sure, it can, any committee can lose its way, but the council and administration are here to make sure it's guided appropriately.
So there were some questions about the Open Meetings Act. As I understand it, most of our committees and commissions aren't subject to the Open Meetings Act. I was wondering if you could talk about that for a second.
Be happy to. That's absolutely right. It immediately triggers a reaction, I'm sure, when someone looks at that and says, not subject to the Open Meetings Act. Oh my goodness, that means the public is excluded and people can't participate, and that is a bad thing. And in part, that can sometimes be true. But when we have committees and work groups, like a group of citizens that come together that are appointed to work on projects and tasks, to give advice to the council and the community, they sometimes just need that space to do that without necessarily being subject to rigid rules of procedure or rigid public participation requirements. And we try to find a balance when we recommend ordinances like this. We see it in many other communities when they create advisory bodies. And the balance is that as long as they have some public input and some public meetings, they can certainly mandate more, they can certainly ask for more, because that's part of their mission, is to ask for input and guidance and ideas. But it's also appropriate for them at times to be able to just sit down, get to work, roll up their sleeves, come up with ideas, blackboard items of interest, and really work through them without being subject to rigid rules of publishing agendas and timelines and public participation requirements. So it's a balance, and certainly council can mandate a different balance, but the balance that we recommended was, I believe, 4 times a year to have public input.
And when they give us the recommendations here, it would be in an open meeting, so residents could then have input on any recommendations that were made, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. That's all I have for you, Mr. Denault. Thank you. I'm so sad to see the commentary on this, both from the residents who came today and from my fellow colleagues. This, to me, isn't controversial, and it doesn't seem to be something that we need to study. It's something that we should be doing every day, and we've already been doing for so long. The current Ethnic Community Advisory Committee, which I think is the actual name of the current committee, they already have diversity awards. They already have a whole award ceremony where they give out diversity awards. Now, under the council's current viewpoint of the Ethnic Advisory Committee, I guess that they're way outside the guidelines of the thing that we have them doing, because that wouldn't seem to be what they're about. And that's what concerns me the most, this idea that somehow we need to have 2 separate but equal committees that do the same exact thing and kind of intrude upon each other. I don't think that having 2 committees that are basically competing for the same volunteers, doing the same thing, talking about the same subjects is good public policy. Essentially, we're arguing about a name change, which I think it goes beyond, because while the current Ethnic Community Advisory Committee has kind of already expanded their purview without us having to direct them, and without us having to put it in the bylaws and the guidelines. Now, we set up a Sustainability Commission, and we set up a Youth Advisory Committee, and there wasn't all this concern about their mission and their statement. We are giving them the ability to write their mission statement. We're giving them the ability to create their bylaws. With the Youth Advisory Committee, they created their own subcommittees and idea groups, which I thought was amazing. I think we can expect that adults will do just as well as teenagers in high school in dividing up the work and being able to get things done. So while I also don't agree with my colleague, Mrs. Sarowski, or Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski, the Ethnic Advisory Committee has been a boon to the city. It is a wonderful group of people, And I think that the one change I would make to this ordinance, if it was to come back to us, was make that a permanent subcommittee. We'll enshrine it right into the new Diversity and Inclusion Commission, that the Ethnic Advisory Committee will be a permanent subcommittee to continue doing all the wonderful things that they're doing. And also, there are local governments that do stuff like this. For a fact, I know that East Point has a Human Rights Commission, which purpose is the exact same thing we're asking from the Diversity and Inclusion Commission. I go back to my comments when we introduced this. I think it should be the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, but I believe it'd be a net good for the city. Other cities are doing this. Jackson just did one too. It's two off the top of my head. The Sustainability Commission is another perfect example. The idea that we can enshrine sustainability as a commission, but diversity should be a committee, we're putting the cart before the horse here. And I'm just so saddened by some of the comments. This will go up and this will come back down, I guess, and we'll have more conversations about the ways that we should do this. But the intent and point is clear. If we want to move into the 21st century, we need to start doing things and thinking about things a little bit different than in 1991 when we created the Ethnic Advisory Committee, the 90s. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. For Mr. Koszubski or Mr. Denault, whoever wants to take it, we've heard from council members a good discussion about whether we should have this be a committee or a commission, or whether the Ethnic Advisory Committee should be a committee or a commission. What is the difference between a committee and commission? I mean, is there some rule of thumb that if we said, well, this is a commission, not a committee, or vice versa, are there certain bullet points you can tell me that would make it any different? Mr. Koszubski?
Thank you, Mayor. Sure. So a commission is a little bit different than a committee, and a committee was formed by a resolution of council. It has various directives that are formed within that resolution, and then in this case, the Ethnic Committee did go and create their own bylaws and started their, when they were created, they started their mission and expanded a little bit. With respect to a commission, commissions are put into the code. They're part of the ordinances. They don't come and go as committees may. Sometimes committees are used for specific purposes and they end, whereas when we do a commission, it's in the ordinance books and it continues on. Commissions also, although committees can get funding by request as well, a lot of times some of our commissions are paid, members are paid. This isn't one of those commissions, but that's spelled out in the ordinances as well.
All right, I mean, to me, it sounds like a lot of form over substance. So the Ethnic Community Committee they've written their own bylaws, and their mission has expanded based on what the members have wanted over the years, is essentially what you're saying?
Well, the city council gave direction in their resolution on what they needed to do, and they've followed your direction, or the council's direction.
Understood. So, I mean, to me, I don't see a whole lot of distinction here between a committee and a commission. I don't really frankly know why that's a relevant part of our discussion. Whether it's a committee, a commission, a board, or whatever, I really don't care. I think from listening to what the city council has said, and my colleagues are making good points, that the Ethnic Committee does a good job in celebrating the various ethnicities that we have here in the city of Sterling Heights, and we have quite a few. We're one of the more ethnically diverse cities in the entire state of Michigan. And that is something to be celebrated. It's something to be, something we should recognize, and it's something that we should actively promote. And so having a group that focuses on that is an admirable goal. And I don't think anybody would disagree that it's something that we should continue to promote regardless of what decision is made up here. I think all 7 of us agree on that. So I don't think that there really needs to be much more discussion about that. The question is, is there going to be a significant overlap between the 2 committees or 2 commissions or commission if we have an Ethnic Advisory or Ethnic Community Committee and a Diversity and Inclusion Commission or a Diversity and Equity Commission or a Human Rights Commission? And that was my concern at the last meeting we spoke about this, and I don't see that as having been resolved. Are we going to take away things from the Ethnic Community Committee that they're doing now to roll it into a diversity and inclusion commission. And it sounds like, as Mr. Radke brought up, these diversity awards and the celebrating diversity would be something that we're taking away from them to put into a diversity and inclusion commission. So while the focus has a lot of the focus tonight has been on, we're taking away a core purpose of the Ethnic Community Committee, which is the focusing on ethnic diversity. I don't see it as such an issue if we have one larger commission that is able to do both. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to find common ground on that, and I would hate to see the very important mission of both sort of groups get spoiled just because we can't seem to agree on that. We've also heard some discussion tonight about the mission statement, that the Diversity and Inclusion Commission seems to be lacking a mission statement. Well, that's what we 7 are here for. We are here right now. It's 7:56, and I don't have anywhere to go tonight, and I'm happy to talk about it. And I don't know if we vote this down, it just goes away or it comes back at strategic planning. I mean, we have to give some direction. I mean, to me, it's important in light of what's going on in the country and in the world to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to promote racial equality and racial justice, to be a more welcoming place to people of all ethnicities, races, religions, sexual orientations, abilities, that we have an advisory commission that can help point out our blind spots. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see that the 7 of us share something in common, okay? And so we are all able-bodied. We are all white, okay? We are all, I think, fairly well off. I don't think any of us are impoverished. So we need to have those voices advising us about ways that we can better deliver services to our community. And this isn't about saying you're more important because you're this color, or you're less important because you're that color, or you're not going to be included because you're a white male and you are going to be included because you're a black female. No. It's about saying we can recognize that we don't have all the answers and that our lived experiences are different than the lived experiences of the community. And so how are we going to know what it's like for somebody who has a different lived experience unless we give them the opportunity to talk to us about it? And although I wasn't able to make it to the African American, I forget, what do we call it? The African American Coalition. What I've heard and what I saw from the videos of it was that there were members of the community saying, it's good to be in a group where I see a bunch of other people that are like me, that they don't necessarily get that experience when they're in their neighborhood. And so it's a safe environment to provide that feedback that we need. We need to hear it as a city council. So the mission statement is obvious. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, it's obvious. Okay? And it's something that I don't think we necessarily, it's like saying, like Mike said, what's the mission statement of the Sustainability Commission? I don't know. I don't think we had a whole lot of discussion about that, but gee, protecting our environment and our earth is pretty darn important, I think, at least to me. And we're going to let those folks with that expertise do the job that we appointed them to do. So I think we can do that. Do we keep the Ethnic Community Committee separate? For goodness sake, fine. Fine. I don't care. But, I mean, this shouldn't be something we push off until January or February. The need is there now. And we've already pushed this off for 30 days. I'd be willing to push it off for another 30 days, but we got to give them direction. We got to tell them, this is what you want, this is what we want you to come back with. And we can spend the next 10 or 15 minutes doing that. So what I would recommend is that if we're going to bring this back, we bring it back soon, okay? For heaven's sakes, we could bring it back in 2 weeks. You can give that feedback right now. I mean, I think we've got consensus that we want the Ethnic Community Committee to stay separate, okay? So they're going to have to sharpen their pencil. If we vote yes on this tonight in 2 weeks, come back, and I would say they'll come back, and it won't be an absorption of the Ethnic Community Committee. It would be a separate commission, okay? But with clear rules about how this committee or commission is going to be moving forward. They can create a mission statement based on the feedback that we give them tonight. We can set the rules right now about what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, okay? I don't think this is something, I mean, I know people are concerned, like, let's not just rush this, let's get this right. But really, we get it right by being deliberate about who we put on the commission. All right? So if we want to be up here and micromanage and create a whole set of rigid rules that this commission has to follow, then what's the point of having good people on there? Let the people tell us. That's the whole point. We don't know what we don't know. That is the point. And we need to appoint people who can give us that feedback. And they should be advising us. They should do it regularly. They should be a commission. So that's my spiel. I'll open it up to another round of discussion if anybody wants it.
Mayor Taylor.
I'm going to vote yes. And I want I would like the administration to come back with the feedback we give them tonight with an ordinance that's tailored to what the city council has said. Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you. I don't know if this is the simple answer, but I think it might help, and this is my suggestion. I would like to change that second committee to be something, instead of being inclusion and diversity, those I know are buzzwords right now, and they do kind of, but they also create a lot of smoke and mirrors. We're not sure exactly what they mean. And I would like to change it as a suggestion to the Equality and Justice Committee. I think that would define their role a little bit differently, or at least what they need to, and what we need from them. How do we promote equality and justice? I'm certainly going to want to be on a committee that's equality and justice. I know my children would be. I know that a lot of people would be. It's not specific to race. It's not specific to ethnicity. It's not specific to gender identity or gender equality. So I think that might be a partial solution to all of this, and that's my suggestion.
Thank you, Ms. Sarowski. Anyone else? Mr. Yanis.
Mr. Mayor, so I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little concerned, though, that we would move forward and then ask the attorneys to do a complete rewrite on the legislation. Now, that's not uncommon. It happens all the time in Lansing and Washington where they just completely substitute the language of an entire piece of legislation and just keep the title. But when we only have a two-step process here and we don't have a committee process, I think that's probably a difficult path to follow to make sure that everybody's aware of what we're doing. We just don't want to show up 2 weeks from now and vote on a piece of legislation that's just being submitted for the first time. I do think more thought needs to go into this, and I do appreciate the fact that we would ask people to sit on this commission and they would sort of guide it. But I think also that when we ask people to sit on this commission, they have to have a starting point. They have to have a starting point. And we have to, if there's a problem in the city or we suspect there's a problem in the city, then we have to define the mission of going out and determining what those problems are and with recommendations on how to fix them. And I do appreciate your comments, Mr. Mayor, that it's not just about race and ethnicity too. It is about abilities. It's about a number of things. And we definitely need to get this right. So I don't want to forward this piece of legislation and ask the attorneys to do a complete rewrite and then pass it into law in 2 weeks. I would much rather see us not do this right now, maybe offer up a resolution or something along those lines, give the city some guidance as to what exactly we want, and then have them come back at a later date. And it could be, it could be a month, 2 months, what have you, but at least come back at a later date with something that's a little more complete in thought. That's not that the legislation legislation's very detailed, Mr. Denault. I don't want to insult you. The legislation was very detailed, but I'm not sure that the thought process was. I agree with Mr. Radke. I think this is the time to do this is now. I agree with you. Words matter, but diversity and inclusion, those don't bother me. Equality and justice, those words don't bother me. The fact of the matter is we want every Sterling Heights citizen to be treated fairly and to have the real Sterling Heights experience that everybody has. And as you brought up, I was at the African American Coalition meeting. It was breathtaking, breathtaking that people would stand up in that room and just be amazed that other people that looked like them were in the same room. These are people who are living as an island in our city and maybe not taking advantage of the full Sterling Heights experience. And we want everyone to have the full Sterling Heights experience. So I don't really want to take a vote on this right now. If you want to take that vote and, it crashes and burns, that's fine. I think there's a better way that we can do this and everybody gets what they want out of this thing, but I just think it's going to take a little more time. And if we want to discuss those options, I'm more than happy to discuss them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, can I jump in and ask procedurally? So if we postpone again, we're just going to be right back in the same spot. So if we vote yes, the concern Mr. Yanis has is that it's probably not going to give enough, maybe it won't give enough time, and then here we are in 2 weeks with a total rewrite. So if we were to, we do at the end of the meeting, if I were to say, without any objection from my colleagues on council, could we ask the administration, if this is voted down, to bring a renewed diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, whatever the case may be, commission in 45 days? Would you get that? Could we give you that direction without having to vote? And then if we vote no and it won't just go away forever to come back maybe in, say, 45 days, for example? Is that feasible?
So one option that might work would be a motion to postpone indefinitely, which would be really no action taken on this motion. And then council would give us direction to come back in 45 days with some direction. So we'd need direction from you. So you can either have the vote, and if it votes down, a council member could ask for us to bring this back in a different form, or it could be a motion to postpone indefinitely, which would have the same effect of not having to vote on the motion necessarily. It would be then giving us direction for bringing back a different, 2 different ordinances, it looks like.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Yanis.
I would suggest that, with all due respect, you withdraw your second, let the original motion die for lack of support, and then we ask city administration to bring something else forward.
Well, I support this, okay, and I mean, I think it's a sort of a distinction without a difference there, all right? I mean, if a motion to postpone is on the floor, if there's a motion to postpone indefinitely, I would support it. I would vote yes on it with the express caveat that I want to be able to provide them with direction to take the feedback we have and craft an ordinance that incorporates everything that we've said here tonight. Okay, so however we do that procedurally, I mean, I guess I don't care, but that's what I'd like to see happen. Let me get through the rest of the council to anybody who wants to speak. Mrs. Zarko?
Sure. I think that if you were to ask me right now to vote on what's on the floor, I would vote no. And because Mr. Yanis he made good points at the last meeting, and he makes good points at this particular meeting. It's the same thing. I'm not comfortable with the way things are written. I don't think we've given administration enough direction on what they could bring back to us. And to say we can sit here for 15 minutes and come up with things that we want included for this ordinance, I think is unfair. I really do. We've all thought about this. Mrs. Sarowski brought up a good point about maybe it's the words that we're using to describe the commission, and maybe title it something else. Mrs. Koski and I had a conversation yesterday. She had a really good idea on what to call it. So those are things I'm thinking of. Certainly not the mission itself am I opposed to, but if you are taking a vote on this tonight, my vote will be no, to move forward, because I want something completely different than what we've been presented with. So nothing further.
Anyone else? Mrs. Koski.
Mr. Mayor, I gave you the information there that I think gives you your statement for this new committee. I agree with Councilwoman Sarowski, Mayor Pro Tem, to change the name. I like the name Human Community Relations as an example. Going by what I believe it is, Livonia has a Human Relations Commission. Lansing has Human Relations and Community Services Advisory Board. I would like to change the name. And Mr. Mayor, if you will take a look at what I read there, you have your mission statement for this type of committee. And the way I'm understanding, and I am going to listen to the webinar and get some ideas on it, but what it does is it works with people that are being discriminated against, or they feel that they're being discriminated against is one of the issues. And it tells you how to overcome this, how to work with it, how to become partners, help them work through and become a inclusive community. And I think that's what we're looking for. So personally, I would just as soon, if you don't want to withdraw the motion, I would say I would vote it down and then come back with a instruction for administration to create a new committee with a different name. I like Mrs. Sarowski's suggestion, but something that is a little bit different. We don't have to become stereotypes, and I would like us to instruct administration to listen to the webinar and give us some ideas, give us a mission statement from the information that you gathered there, because I think that is telling us what we're trying to do. So that's my thoughts.
Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mrs. Koski. I think the cleanest way to do this tonight is to vote this down and give direction to bring forward a new committee. I'm glad that we agree to disagree, or agree that the Ethnic Community Commission should be separate. Mr. Radke had said something about East Point's commission, which is the Human Rights Commission, something to that effect. It used human rights. And if we were going to combine both of these groups, to me, human rights is totally different than ethnic diversity. So that's why, just to confirm why I believe that these two groups should be separate. I also think that coming up with criteria tonight is totally unfair to all of us. I think we need to really think what criteria of resident we want on this commission because of what we're trying to accomplish. So I think all of that needs to be figured out, and it can't be figured out in 15 minutes tonight. So I agree, Mrs. Koski, I think we should vote this down tonight and start fresh. And I have no issue with Mrs. Sarowski's new name, or if we come up with something different. But at this point, as it stands, I will not be in support of this motion on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Mr. Radke.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Koszubski. Could the city council appoint a subcommittee to work with the city manager to craft a better ordinance?
Mr.
We don't traditionally do that, but I'm curious if we can.
We have council.
I haven't seen it yet as I've been here, so I'd have to look into that and get back to you on that.
Or maybe a different idea might be, during strategic planning, we meet in small groups with the city manager to talk about the future of the city. Maybe we could ask that the city manager take meetings with the city council. I'm kind of torn. We've had this in front of us now for, I believe, it's been 45 days. And the idea that we're not ready today to say what we'd want changed or what we would want to have different about the ordinance in front of us, I'm kind of shocked, because that's part of doing your homework. And I think that we're just pushing the can down the road, and we keep on pushing the can down the road. I refuse to withdraw my motion. I think this is a good thing as it is now. I'm sorry it's not going to go forward. I think without objection, we can ask, give feedback that we want this to come back in some different form. And I would suggest that if we do that, we have the city manager meet with us in small groups to hammer out a new ordinance. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. How much time do you think you would need for that, Mr. Vanderpool? Based on the feedback you've received tonight, how much time do you think it would take?
Mayor, I think the feedback has been very helpful this evening. I think it's been very thoughtful. I think the first meeting in October would give us, it's a little under 45 days, I believe, would give us the time we need to collaborate further with City Council. I think that's a very good idea. And make sure that we get it right, bringing it back. And I think that's a reasonable compromise in terms of the timing.
Okay. All right, very well. What I want to try to avoid is, I guess it's incumbent on each of us then to reach out and provide the feedback. I didn't mean to be flippant and say that we could get this done here tonight in 15 minutes. I mean, we've been spending a considerable amount of time talking about it already, and I mainly hear people saying what's wrong with the ordinance. It doesn't include the things I want, but I don't hear anybody saying the things that they want in it. And that's the purpose of a deliberation. That's the purpose of what we are here. I mean, the closest is Ms. Koski's provided me with this complimentary web event, How to Become an Ally, which I think is important, but I don't think that that's really what this, we're not trying to create, I'm not trying to create a diversity inclusion commission to train people in the community how to be my ally. I mean, I might need to learn how to be an ally to people who are different than me, but I don't necessarily see a lot of overlap between what we're trying to do here and training to be an ally. Two very important things, but different things. So I guess what I hope doesn't happen is that we don't come back in 45 days and the council says, well, this misses the mark too. We gotta give the feedback to the city administration. However that's done. And I hear tonight, a councilwoman saying, I had a conversation with a colleague yesterday and there were some good ideas. Well, geez, come on, right now. Talk about them right now. 15 minutes, I don't care if it takes 4 hours, That's what I was hoping that we would be able to accomplish tonight. So I hope we're not just kicking the can down the road and then going to come back and then spend an hour, wondering whether it's going to be a committee or a commission or whether it's going to be worded this name or that name. And that's, to me, elevating the form over the substance, which is so vitally important right now. So I'm going to vote yes. I've given my reasons, and every member of this body has given good and valid reasons for why they're going to vote the way they do, and I respect that. Without objection from my colleagues, if this motion fails, I'd like the city administration to bring a renewed ordinance with the purpose of promoting equality, justice, inclusion, etc., before the city council, the first meeting in October. Seeing no objection, Ms. Zarko, do you object to that?
I do not object to that. But Mayor Taylor, I do have a comment, and I appreciate you giving me
Mayor
the time
Taylor, I
to
call
make
the
it.
question.
The question has been called. Mr. Koszybski, do we have to have a roll call vote on the motion to call the question and then the underlying motion, or is it one vote?
It's one vote.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Zarko, calling the question takes precedence. Ms. Riska, the motion on the floor is to introduce the ordinance as written. It's been moved and supported. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Schmidt?
No.
Mrs. Sarowski?
No.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Yanes?
No.
Mrs. Yarko?
No.
Mrs. Kosky?
No.
Mr. Radke?
Yes.
Okay, motion fails 2-5. I asked for objection, heard none. So I believe you have direction to bring back a renewed ordinance, committee, commission, whatever the feedback was. You're going to have to watch the tape, I guess. And then we'll hopefully avoid this at the first meeting on October 4th and have a more productive and unified approach to getting this done, okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, council. Next item on our agenda tonight is an ordinance adoption, and this is to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City Code of Ordinances to modify the prohibition on planning commissioners serving on city boards and commissions. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? Ms. Ryan?
Ryan, Sterling Heights. I'd like to know why. I mean, we've had it this way since the beginning, and now you want to change it so that they can be on whatever and all. And I mean, there is a lot of people in the city. I don't think you need to be doing this. I don't think we need to have somebody on all of them that's on all of them. This is the word I'm using. So I do not understand why you're even doing this and why it's a change to our charter like this and that, because at this point, it's not necessary. Again, this is another thing that you're putting through, and the real question is why? Why is this being done? I mean, we have so many people in the city. You don't need to put somebody that's on one on all the others. Give people a chance in the city to be on these committees, commissions. And as far as the planning, I mean, that is a very special commission that we have. And that, so I think that should remain that they're not on all of them. I mean, if you really think about what they do and what decisions they make, you don't want that to be spread across all of our commissions. You really don't. I mean, I'm reading this thing, questioning, I mean, you're talking about beautification, you're talking about our ethnic, you're talking about our historical, you're talking about our library, you're talking about all of our committees and commissions. And I'm like, you know, this is, again, a not necessary thing. This is, again, where you're doing this over the summer, nobody's knowing what's going on, and you're not even getting input from the residents on this stuff. You're just pushing this stuff through and changing our charter. It's not necessary. If our charter was set up properly, which it has been for how many years, you guys come along and you're starting to change everything. But you're not getting input from the residents. You're not. I'm here representing a lot of residents who are just questioning, what are you all doing? Why are we doing all these changes? What is wrong that you're doing this? What is wrong with what we've had? If you don't have people to serve on these, that you got to take somebody and put them on all of them, there's a big red flag here. Are you excluding? I mean, you got a resident here who's been excluded. I know other residents who've been excluded. They've applied. They're good residents. They've been here for years. So again, I question what you're doing here again and that. And you're doing it in the summer. when everybody's gone on vacation. In the midst of this COVID, where you got everybody locked down, mask up, silenced for the most part, and not able to be here. A lot of people don't want to do this social distancing. A lot of people don't want to come here like I am. They can't. That's why I'm here. I'm here representing quite a lot of people who are questioning what all of you are doing. What are you doing? What are you changing? Why are you changing this? We've had this for years. I've lived here over 22 years, and now you're changing it? Why? Why don't you tell us the real why here? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ryan. Ms. Elias?
This will be the cleanest thing in this whole place.
No, the reason you have here, it says, because volunteers can at times be challenging to find. Is it only because the ones you want to find? Because we're all residents of this city. You want inclusion, you want participation, but conservatives like me don't seem to get elected, nor Jasmine. We're both immigrants, we're both minorities, and we're both legal immigrants. But it's interesting how certain people are selected and others are not. I think the reason why you say you can't find them is because you want to select, and that's not fair. Because if we're all equal and representative of the city, everybody should have a chance. And I feel for Jasmine. She's been working very hard, has a lot of support. She's extremely educated. She's an architect. She has been involved in the community, and somehow she's always not chosen in those areas that she wants. So my point, is there really a lack of individuals, or is there a lack of the individuals you want? That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Ms. Elias. Anyone else on this item? Ms. Early?
Jasmine Arias, Sterling Heights. I really had a question why too. And the reason is because I noticed that what you want to do is regarding 9 of the commissions. If I'm not mistaken, we had 25 commissions, boarding commissions. A few of them are not active. Planning commissioners, and 11 members in the ethnic committee. If you go, and I had, before the COVID came out and we couldn't come to meetings, I was talking about the amount of people that are in different commissions. You already are doing it. We have several people that are in the same person in different commissions. That should not be happening. We had a population of what, 130,000 people? Several people in the waiting list. I was in 2 commissions, Art and Beautification Commissions, which is one of the one listed for the planning commissioners, if you pass this, to be part of. You are not getting people in the commission, which is not true because I know people want to volunteer. It's because the way you are handling it. There is a waiting list. The Planning Commission has been one of the commissions that I apply to be part of. But when they are openings, you went and appointed, and this is appointment by Mayor Taylor, people that were not in the list. Why? Because they were your friends, because they could do what you wanted. So if you want people to volunteer, will you keep telling people you want more people to volunteer, you want more people to join the community? Please, those that are in the list, let them there. To make the planning commissioners to be part of the other commissions is just taking those positions for those ones like me waiting to be appointed. And yes, I have been in commissions and I can work with the people, and we had community groups that are not related with the city because we see this happening. We see that the city is not taking in consideration those people like me that could help the city to move forward. because my political affiliation, again, and because my Judeo-Christian values, and because when something needs to be said, I say it. That doesn't take away my right to be part of the commissions or the other people that are on the list. I invite the residents to go and check each commission. I do have a chart, the names, how they are repeated in different commissions, and to make this legal. This is just making something legal that you are already doing. The planning commissioners, if they are there, is one of the commissions. Lead them there. Why do you need them to be part of all the commissions, to control the commissions and what happened in the commissions? I believe that we do have a community that had a good heart, that want to be part of the volunteering for the city, and the more volunteers we get, the better this city will be. Yes, they may not agree with your point of view, or you may not agree with them, but they want to help. So please save time. This planning, this what you are trying to pass tonight with the planning commissioner is to put your friends in other commissions. I will be continue this week requesting the city to appoint me to the planning commission, the ethnic commission, and any other commission. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Who'd like to be next on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
resolve to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City Code of Ordinances to modify the prohibition on planning commissioners serving on city boards and commissions.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Not really. I think this is pretty clear cut. The state legislature changed the law, and we're just going to follow their lead. I know that we've had some interest from some of our planning commissioners for serving on some of these committees, and right now they're barred. Hopefully that this will change. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council, any further discussion? Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I just want to make a comment on what I've heard tonight is that we put friends on these commissions and then we influence them to do what we want them to do. By our guidelines, once somebody's on a commission, by the council guidelines, we cannot influence them to make a decision. It's completely out of their hands. They make their own decisions. They don't communicate with us even about what's on their agenda. So I think that's a false statement, and I want to make sure that it's corrected before we leave here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zarko. Council, anyone else? I did bring up something at the last council meeting, which was that, I'm not sure why. I'd prefer to see a more inclusive list than just limiting it to these 9. Mr. Koszubski, is there a legal reason why a planning commissioner can't serve on another board other than, let's take the ZBA out of it, but other than the ZBA, is there a legal reason that they would be prohibited under Michigan law from serving on another board?
A legal reason, not for every board. There are some boards that require certain requirements to be on them. Certain boards have to have certain people living in certain areas, things of that nature. It's really not a legal reason as much as it is the fact that it is a quasi-judicial board. And we felt it was necessary not to have planning commissioners sit on other boards that deal with maybe the same issues, same pieces of property. There's issues that could arise of conflicts, things of that nature.
Okay. To me, that's sort of like it's sort of a blend of a legal and a policy issue. I'm in favor of this as written. To my colleagues, I would say we should, well, let me ask one last question. Do we have to exclude the ZBA from this? Is the ZBA by law, you can only have one liaison, but you can't have multiple?
Correct, that's by state statute.
So if I was writing it and I got to, by fiat say this is what it's going to be, I'd say that we would decide on a case-by-case basis for all the commissions, except for the ZBA. If there's anybody who would be willing to make that motion to amend, I'd support it. Going once, going twice.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion to amend.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Okay.
speak before you?
Sure, let me give Ms. Koski, it hasn't been seconded yet, so Ms. Koski, go ahead.
Through the chair to Mr. Jahuski, isn't the Planning Commission guaranteed or structured by law? Didn't
is.
we change this a number of years back? Because what I remember is council used to appoint members to the Planning Commission, and then the laws changed. And I believe your firm corrected this and made the appointments by the mayor, and at that time should have made this change also, but didn't do it. Am I wrong?
The state law changed that allowed for up to 9 members, but the prohibition on zoning was still there. It's the language that had other municipal offices that had changed, basically allowing them to get on other boards and commissions at that time, except for the ZBA, only allowing 1 member. That's what changed. And I wasn't here for that change back in, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 1990, but when that happened, this council left that language in place when the ordinance was amended. I don't know the reason why at that time, but it was left in place.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, is it could have been changed at the same time that we changed the appointment to the board.
Yes, it could have.
So this is nothing new. This is something that should have been done 20 years ago.
Could have been.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yanez, I would entertain a amendment, a motion to amend the motion on the floor to provide for planning commissioners to serve on any other board other than the zoning board of appeals, subject to the 1 liaison.
Yes, I will make that amendment. You don't want me to actually repeat that, do you? Can you write it
You
out
would
for
say
me?
so moved.
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. Is that sufficient amendment for you, Mr. Koszybski, to amend the motion on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
One option, Mayor, would be, I can probably swing the language that you would need if you would like to make a specific amendment to a sentence.
Just strike,
Because
So-
I believe what you're trying to do is open it up so that all planning commissioners would have the ability to sit on any board of the city with the exclusion of only 1 being
Correct.
allowed on zoning board.
Correct. That was the motion I would entertain, and that was the motion that Mr. Yanez made, and that's the motion that I supported.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion on that, that particular amendment?
Mike?
Mr. Radke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question. If we're going to talk about property and exclude the ZBA, should we also exclude the OBA? I'm not trying to parse it. I don't really care either which way. I was just curious about that. That's the one question I have. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
And I don't see why we would have to exclude the OBA. I don't think there's a lot of, OBA is concerned with making
Maintenance
sure that property maintenance code is enforced. Like I was saying, I think we should do this on a case-by-case basis, and I think we can get the feedback, at the time an appointment is made. And rather than limit it, I'd like to see it broadened, and then if there's concerns from the administration, I would say let's address them at that time. That's how I would prefer to proceed, but.
Mr. Mayor?
Mrs. Konski.
I believe administration has recommended that the Planning Commission be eligible to serve on certain advisory boards, and they listed them. There's 9 of them. Can't we just leave it that way?
Well, yeah, of course we can. Yeah, but that's the point is, I don't want it to be that way. I've got 1 vote.
Okay, you have.
If I get 3
your vote.
more.
No, no. What I'm concerned about is, as a planning commission member, if they serve on all the boards except the ZBA, there may be a conflict of interest in that they're going to be sitting on another board that's going to review the same property that they just got through dealing with. And that was the purpose of limiting it to the 9 boards that they can serve on in addition to the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I mean, I don't envision a planning commissioner sitting on like 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 boards. You know, if a planning commissioner happens to be on the Ordinance Board of Appeals, that's, I mean, we by law can only have 1 on the ZBA, so that's carved out. I'm thinking, what other boards specifically, you know, OBA could be one, but I don't know that there's a whole lot. I bet if you look at OBA's agenda and the Planning Commission's agenda over the last 10 years, I bet you that there's not a whole lot of overlap between those houses that are subject to the Ordinance Boards of Appeals and the Planning Commission. I just don't think that there's that there's the opportunity for much conflict there. Now, of course, from time to time there is. I mean, we all, you know, all of us at some point or right now have had private employment and been on the city council. Is there the potential for conflict? Certainly, but does that mean that we should only limit council members to people who don't have outside private employment? I don't think that would be a good idea. So I'd say take it on a case-by-case basis, make it as inclusive as possible so that we can have the best people for the best fit, for the best commission, and not just limit it. So that's my opinion. And, you know, like I said, I'm happy with it as it's written. I prefer it the way it's been amended. Anything else?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I would like administration to tell us why you're limiting only 9 boards for a planning commission member to serve on in addition to their appointment.
Mr. Krzyzewski.
Sure. Actually, I'll defer to Mr. Denault on that because he has a specific answer for that question. If you don't mind.
Mr. Denault.
Mr. Mayor.
You certainly agree with me, so go ahead with your comments.
Mr. Denault, you do not agree with the mayor. Please continue.
I'm just being facetious.
I am
trying to head some
the
levity
neutral lawyer in all of this, right? I write it and I try to make sure that the language works if it's ever challenged. With that being said, the recommendation was specifically made to expand it to advisory bodies, not because of any statutory prohibitions, although there may be 1 or 2 out there that we would have to look at on a case-by-case basis, depending on the appointment, but because we had some concern that for many, many, many years, it was, they were excluded from being on any boards and commissions, the theory being that they could, in fact, interface with cases that involved a site plan that they didn't like, and now it's back in front of them in front of a different board, whether it's the Corridor Improvement Authority or the LDFA or the OBA or the Board of Code Appeals. There could be the potential where they really like the project and then somebody gets in trouble at a different board and they're on that board and they're disappointed with that person and they maybe revisit or rethink their position on the other board. There were so many different hypothetical possibilities that we thought of that it felt safer and more prudent to not put them in that position to begin with. With that being said, you know, I don't disagree either with the other comments that are being made that we all could potentially encounter conflicts in life, and we have to deal with those accordingly and appropriately and professionally. So again, as I said in the last answer, we're here to guide and help and support and make sure that we do things the right way regardless of the direction we go, and hopefully we can do that no matter what decision the council makes this evening.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. Council, anyone else? Mrs.
Mayor
Schmidt?
Taylor, upon listening to Mr. Denault, I would be more comfortable if we eliminated not only the BZA, but OBA, CIA, Board of Review. I think those are the most, those commissions have the most potential to have a conflict with someone on the planning commission.
Can you name them again, please?
Sure. The OBA, Corridor Improvement Authority, Board of Review, and the BZA.
Okay. Anyone else? I mean, that's more expansive than it originally was, which I would be in favor of. And so if anyone else have comment on that? Going once, going twice? Okay, so then if there's no more comment on it, I would say we have a motion to amend on the floor. Frankly, I sort of in the dark. Let me ask you, Ms. Koski, would you be more supportive of the motion if it were to include the OBA, the CIA, and the Board of Review?
Yes.
Okay. I would be, Mr. Yanez, would you be willing to amend your amended motion to include the OBA, CIA, Board of Review, and Zoning Board of Appeals as the 4 boards that planning commissioners may not serve on?
Yes, I would.
And I would support such a amendment.
You can just withdraw and restart the whole motion.
Are we within the bounds of legality here, Mr. Kaschubski?
You're going to need a motion, you're going to need to vote on the motion to amend.
I would entertain a motion to amend the amended motion such that a planning commission member may serve on any other board or commission except for the Ordinance Board of Appeals, 1 and 2, Corridor Improvement Authority, Board of Review, and Zoning Board of Appeals.
So moved.
So moved. Support. It's been moved and supported. Any other discussion on that? With no discussion on that, Ms. Riska, can we please have a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion?
Mayor. Mayor, before, Mr. Denault wants to speak on
Okay, Mr.
the
Denault.
procedure of this, I'm sure.
Jumped up.
Oh, my.
First Amendment.
Time in my years that I've gotten up and tried to speak before the vote went through. Just to clarify, because I am the one that will have to write the language, and this will help. The way that, Mr. Mayor, you just rephrased the motion suggests that planning commissioners would not be permitted to serve on the ZBA. And I'd like to qualify that with, are we still comfortable that they may have a liaison that can serve
Yes.
on both the zoning board and the PC pursuant to state law? Are we comfortable with that?
Yeah, so our amendment relating, the second amendment relating back to the first amendment was that the liaison could continue on the zoning board. Is that your understanding, the motion maker, Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
And that was my understanding as the supporter of the motion. And so the doubly amended motion that's on the floor to be voted on includes a prohibition on OBA 1, OBA 2, CIA, Board of Review, and ZBA, except for the one liaison. Ms. Riska, can we please have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Yes. Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Yanez?
Yes.
Mrs. Yarko?
Yes.
Mrs. Koski?
Yes.
Mr. Radke?
Yes.
And Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries 7-0. The amendment does. Now the underlying motion, which is on the floor. Any last discussion on this item? If not, I just want to make one clarification. This is not a charter revision, as was brought up by a member of the public. This is an ordinance, okay? So an ordinance is within the city council's purview. We are elected directly by the people. We make ordinances at public hearings where we incorporate input from the public, as we did tonight. And it's not a charter change, which requires a vote of the people. With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on the consent agenda or any item on the consent agenda? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is to consider an appointment to the City of Sterling Heights Local Development Finance Authority. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, this is a appointment to the LDFA, is a mayoral appointment to a partial term ending June 30th, 2021. in our backup, or in our backup material as well as, along with the public agenda and backup that was provided. Dominic Patras is an applicant. I don't believe he serves on any board at this time. He ranked the LDFA as the number 2 board that he would like to serve on. I had the opportunity to speak with Dominic via text, Facebook Messenger, actually. He reached out to me back in 2019 saying he was interested in serving on a board or commission. He's not my friend, although he seems like a very friendly man, and I have no doubt that he would be friendly to be with. He's my Facebook friend, but I have some of them I don't know personally. For whatever it's worth, his resume and background, I think, would make him a good fit to the LDFA, and I would appreciate a council member who would make that appointment for me tonight.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yanes.
Resolved to appoint Dominic Patras to the LDFA to a term ending on June 30th, 2021, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
I will say that I know Mr. Petras. I think Mr. Radke does too, and he's a fine, upstanding gentleman. I think he'll be a good fit.
Good. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo Councilman Yanes. Dominic has wanted to get involved in the city for some time. I think he'd be an excellent fit. He lives here and has lived here for some time, and he is very interested in local government. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Yeah, that was the impression I got from speaking with him. So with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes that portion of our agenda. We'll move on to communications from citizens. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda? Come on up, Ms. Elias.
I'd like to make, I'm not going to touch it. I'd like to make a suggestion that I've seen in other council meetings, because I've asked, and I know other people have asked questions, but we've never got an answer to them. I believe in one of our complementary cities, they have questions that are received, and then the next meeting, they're answered. Because if we are the residents and you were to respond to us, it would be greatly appreciated. I've had a few questions that never got an answer. And if we pose them and they're legitimate questions, could you kindly bring back an answer to us rather than let it just go into the empty black box somewhere? It never gets answered. I've noticed that for many people as well. I just think this would be really helpful and constructive to us, because I know I've asked several questions on certain issues and I've never received an answer. So that's something I would love for you to consider and make that a normal procedure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Elias. Anyone else? Their communications? Mrs. Ryan.
Jackie Ryan, Sterling Heights. I would like to ask for something to be done by the city council that's positive, that will bring our city together, that will unite all of us. And that's what's being done throughout other cities. One is being done in Dallas right now, this Wednesday. They are going to do a proclamation, is what they've done. And it's going to be a day of prayer and fasting to eradicate this coronavirus so we can take off these masks, so we can gather properly as human beings, you know? This is not how we're to live with these masks on. So it is the Dallas mayor who's done it. It's the Fort Worth mayor who's done it. This Wednesday, they have put through a proclamation. I have a copy of that proclamation and that I'd like to give the city council of the Fort Worth one. And I also have the Pledge of Allegiance with it, and there's a purpose for that. And let me read you that Pledge of Allegiance, because we say it at every meeting. And I'd like to know if you guys really adhere to this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Every meeting, you all state that. Every meeting. you agree to that pledge. And I ask you then, can we not do a proclamation for prayer for our city? Other cities are doing it. I think we should do it. And I do have that for the city clerk, if I can give it. What it says, I'm going to read you what it says, because it is very much important to understand what's happening in our city and our country. And that proclamation reads, and I'll just read you it as quick as I can here, because I know I'm on a time limit. The coronavirus pandemic has tragically led to illness, suffering, and death. The coronavirus pandemic has caused great economic harm, putting people out of work, closing businesses, and bringing hunger and hardship to many residents. The coronavirus pandemic interrupted the education of our children in our city and put our educators at risk. The coronavirus continues to spread throughout our cities. There is not a cure or a vaccine for this virus yet. The prayer of our city should be initiative to note that throughout the history of the city, especially Sterling Heights here, the state of Michigan, and our nation, the United States of America, people have turned to prayer to bring healing and deliverance where human efforts have failed. The prayer initiative would be to encourage residents of Dallas to fast and pray in place, where at home, at work, or at school, or at the noon hour on a certain day, and they're using this Wednesday, August 19th at noon. They shall designate it, be called the Day of Prayer. So Sterling Heights Day of Prayer. A day of prayer and fasting for the eradication of this coronavirus from our city. The initiative would aim to bring all the houses of faith together on a given day, at a given time, and encourage people of all faiths to pray wherever they are at noon on that day.
Okay, thank
The
you.
initiative encouraged, I just got one more line, to unite the prayer for the eradication of the coronavirus from our city and the healing for our city. And I ask you, Mayor, and I ask you, City Council, to please, let's get our city united.
Okay,
once
thank you,
and
Ms.
for all.
Ryan.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else under communications from citizens? Mr. Jefferson?
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. This goes a little something like this. How few have made so much trouble for so many people? That's a quote from Winston Churchill. Anytime the government is trying to fix people's social ills, there's going to be a problem. Going to be a problem. Ms. Yarko, you've been up there a while. Mr. Yanez, you brought up something. Ms. Yarko, you brought up something tonight. You said that the African Americans was out on an island. There's no time, no point that none of them couldn't come up here and speak tonight on the Tuesday night. That you guys wouldn't listen to them. Because for a person like me, I remember a lot of stuff. I remember LBG, they had an issue, they came up here, they had a mass group, everybody listened to them. People with the mosque issue, they came up here, mass group, everybody listened to them. The people with the pigeons, they came up here in a mass group and everyone listened to them. Fishy dog ordinance. last year, we had the people in the one subdivision was getting the path behind the house. Everyone they came up here and people listened to them. So to say that people didn't have a way for the city to listen to them, that's straight. We'll just keep it at that. Mr. Roski, I need to apologize to you. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it right now. I'm sorry, Ms. Roski. But Mike Radke, Mayor Taylor, was this political sign ordinance this time okay for you too? Because people who don't know, we, over the last 4 years, spent no less than 15 hours talking about the political sign ordinance because of them two always changing it. And it will come up again. So we need to ask the city clerk tonight, how did the political sign ordinance go? I noticed in some spots, there seemed to be a lot. Some places, there was some, I don't know how those people got signatures for those spots because it was empty, like the place up there, Linda Comer always on me about. That was the amusement park area. I saw Pulicito had a sign up there. I don't know how he got a signature for that spot. It's been empty for years and nobody went over it. How did the sign ordinance go? And I'm looking at this sign ordinance now because I've seen people over the weekends pitching for windows, handymans, signs like that. So if you could fill us in on that. And then if anyone left out signs long enough, who picked them up? Was there a fine associated with those? Did we make any money off of that? And who was supposed to pick them up? I know at one point it was supposed to be the police department who was supposed to be picking them up. I don't know. They went going through picking up those signs. I remember Mr. Hansen. I don't know if he's still able to do it now because he was an older fellow picking up those signs. He always did a pretty good job at it. So if somebody could ask that question to the city clerk tonight, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else under communications? Yes.
From Sterling Heights, I know Jasmine and Jackie, that's why I'm here. I want to end this note on a happy meeting, and I want to thank the police for all they do and everything they do. What I do is I back the police, and I'm doing these events called Back the Blue. And I'm doing events called Back the Blue, and it's just to show our support for the police. And I go to different communities and do them. I'm doing one in Sterling Heights Saturday, but eventually I want to do one in Sterling Heights. I just want the council and the community and everybody to thank the police and realize what the police do for us and how they are here for us to protect us and serve us. And I hope you guys aren't not thinking about defunding the police because we need the police. But thank you for your service. Thank you. And one day I'd like to have an event up here where we can back the blue up here in Sterling Heights. In the wintertime, I want to do adopt a police station or adopt a cab because it's going to be too cold because I do these outside. But I just want to get everybody on board and let them know that, start thinking about the police and what they do and all the hard work they do for us, and appreciate the police for what they do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else under communications from citizens? If not, I'll close that portion. We'll go on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool, anything tonight?
Mayor, just quickly, I wanted to mention the city did enforce our sign ordinance throughout the recent election primary, and we will continue to do that. Our sign ordinance is something that is widely publicized to candidates, and we had a number of violations that we did have to enforce in the last election, which is pretty customary. We expect that will be the case as well in the general election. We have highly automated the process online. We do send candidates letters explaining the sign ordinance, so we continue to do what we can to enforce our temporary sign ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. And just one thing that got brought up that I think you might be able to touch on is that oftentimes members of the community ask questions. We are not, based on our council rules, we don't engage in a back and forth, but Mr. Vanderpool is always taking down notes. Normally, he's sitting right here next to me and I see him scribbling furiously and answers those questions. And questions that don't get answered by administration or a council member, there's almost always follow-up from the appropriate department head afterwards. So if you have a question, you bring it up here, you will get that question answered. And I just want to say kudos to Mr. Vanderpool because normally he's, answering all those questions, writing all those down and answering it on behalf of a number of different department heads. So, Mr. Koszybski, anything tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
Okay, council, any reports, new business, anything?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
First, thank you. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the mayor of Centennial, Colorado, responding to Mayor Taylor's challenge. And I say game on. I know we have canvassers out in the neighborhoods right now for those residents that have not responded to their census. Our pride is a little bit on the line here. I'm not sure what the wager is going to be, but I know that we can do better than Centennial, Colorado. And also, on a good note, I wanted to say that today I went kayaking with some friends of mine in the Clinton River. And if you have any desire to possibly try that experience, I will tell you that it is so much fun and it's family friendly. Our section of the Clinton River is very doable. The two ladies that I was with, it was their first time kayaking, lots of laughs, nobody tipped. It's very shallow, so even if you do tip, I guess anybody can drown in a bucket of water, but it's pretty shallow. It's very doable. I highly, highly recommend it. If you have a couple of hours in your day, partake in that Clinton River. We saw deer today, turtles, a heron. There's tons of wildlife out there. So we have this gem. And one of the ladies I was with actually lives in Troy, and she said, oh my God, this is so close. We don't need to go to Stony Creek or, the Asabo River. We have this so close. So take advantage. It is a gem in our city, and I highly recommend it even for families. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I agree with Charles Jefferson. I think that we should change the sign ordinance in the city, but I realize that with the current composition of council, it's unlikely. That's why it hasn't come back up. Not because I'm against it or I've changed my tune. I just simply know that it won't pass. So what's the point of bringing it back forward? Through the clerk to Mrs. Riska, I read an article this week that said that 165 ballots arrived late after Election Day at the Sterling Heights Post Office. I was wondering, has that number increased at all since then?
Ms. Riska.
We've just had a few stragglers come in after that, maybe 5 or 10, not a whole lot.
In the average year, how many ballots missed the deadline, I guess I would say?
For a larger election, it's not uncommon for us to have about, 20 or 30 that are late.
So this was a larger number than the average election?
That is correct.
Okay, that's good to know, and it's nothing we can do. It's all at the post office at this point.
That is correct.
So I guess I would urge our residents to either mail back their ballot early or even easier, drop it in one of our convenient drop boxes that are around City Hall and the fire stations. Also, through the chair to Mrs. Riska, the postmaster said he's going to investigate the matter. Have we heard back from him at all?
We have not heard back from him yet. We will be reaching back out to him soon.
Wonderful. Also, I had asked in a prior meeting, and I'm still waiting on this number, how many ballots were rejected for signature mismatch during the most recent election?
And I don't have that number for you yet, sir. I will make sure to get that to you and get it out to all of mayor and council.
I appreciate that. And I believe I heard through Mr. Vanderpool or in one of our packets that I was actually surprised by the low number of people who had the partisan section spoiled, because most people did vote the correct way, but there were some spoilage of that section because people crossed over.
That is correct.
But it was a very low amount. It was like 2,000, I want to say, or something like that.
Or, yeah, about 1,500.
It's not bad at all. I want to commend the city clerk and all of our temporary employees who did an awesome job on Election Day. It was just wonderful. Just make folks remember, vote early and get the ballots back in so we can make sure your voice is heard here at Sterling Heights. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? Mr. Yanis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping Mr. Radke would follow up with this one more question, so through the chair to Ms. Riska. My understanding is the state will be paying the postage of returned ballots. Can you expound on that, please?
Ms. Riska?
Yes, that is correct. Secretary of State Benson just announced a couple days ago that the state will be reimbursing for return postage on ballots.
So the money that we allocated, we're going to be getting back from the state?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else, council? Mrs. Koski?
Yes. Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, is there a possibility that we could do some extensive advertising in regard to the drop boxes for this upcoming election to let people know that they are there so that if they don't want to mail their ballot, they can drop it off at City Hall? And I'm sure the mayor would love to do a video to help promote that.
Mr. Vanderpool?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Koski, yes, it's a great idea. We've had some conversations about coming up with a public information campaign on that exact issue, making sure that residents know to use the drop boxes. We had really good participation, I think around 70% or so, if I recall, on the drop box. So we know it's very popular, will be even more popular. In addition, we want to make sure that we remind residents to if they're going to use the U.S. mail, make sure they mail it no later than, say, a week out from the election date. So that's all going to be part of our public information campaign that we're developing.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Koski. Anyone else? Mrs. Zarko?
Mayor Taylor, thank you. I'm going to go back to the post office. My concern isn't just with the election and the ballots. My concern also is with people that aren't getting reimbursement checks maybe for money that they put out for medicine. It's also that bills are coming in late where they're to the point that there's not enough turnaround time for somebody to pay their bills on time. Those are my concerns too, not just with the election. So, I had a call this week from a resident that wanted to know what we could do as a city and get behind this and start, writing our congressmen and women to see what they can do about funding our post office again. I know there's been a lot of talk this week, but it hasn't actually happened yet. So I think that's maybe an action that we should look into. She suggested a resolution, and my feeling is a resolution is always a letter of good intent, but we need action, and I think we need something a little more aggressive because what's happening with the post office isn't just about the election and the ballots. It's about a lot more. So if you could get back to us as to what we could do as a council and a city, I would really appreciate it. Nothing further.
All right. Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Actually, what I would like to do is just commend my colleagues because this was a little bit of an interesting meeting. We did have some disagreement, but we agreed to disagree, and I do believe that we came up with some really good debate and legislation. Thank you to the community who did come out and have their comments to us as well, because we do listen. And even if our rules do not allow us to directly respond, we will try very hard to get you those answers and also to listen and make our decisions based on those answers. And every other resident that does reach out to us. So it was a very good meeting. I was quite impressed. And, it's not easy to disagree with people that you do have a lot of respect for. But thank you all for having a good discussion tonight. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Sarowski. I don't have anything else to add, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Been moved and supported. No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming out tonight.